Japan, which is imagined as a super high-tech, futuristic and rich country. Huge skyscrapers, bullet trains, robots, cutting-edge technology, global companies, everything seems excessively futuristic. Yet on the streets, more than half of the taxis still look like 1995 models instead of electric cars. Old model laptops, outdated fax machines are everywhere, and in Japan, people still use CDs. Even adult content is quite outdated, mostly sold through comics and magazines. So, on one hand, Japan is considered one of the world's most advanced tech cities, but on the other hand, it is also true that this stagnation is not due to a love for vintage items. It is the result of a global economic crisis in which Japan has been stuck for the last 30 years. Japan has become a country with one of the world's largest external debts. 30% of the population here is elderly and retired who cannot contribute to the economy. So, what is the reason behind Japan's current state? To understand this, we need to go back in time. During World War II, Russia and the USA were locked in a long Cold War. Both nations were expanding their influence zones by befriending different countries worldwide, and China became a strong ally of the Soviet Union. Along with this, a part of South Korea also aligned with them. At this time, the USA needed to strengthen its influence in this region, otherwise the entire region could soon become part of the socialist bloc. This is where Japan emerged as the perfect candidate to safeguard America's capitalist ideology. From here, Japan's destiny changed forever. In the early 1950s, after World War II, the Korean War began. Just before World War II, Korea was also a Japanese colony. But after the war, Korea split into two parts, Socialist North Korea and Capitalist South Korea. While Japan was recovering from World War II, North Korea, with the backing of the USSR, was rapidly advancing. North Korea attacked South Korea to reunify the peninsula under communist ideology. The USA, seeing this situation, panicked and immediately started providing massive support to South Korea. Japan and Korea are strategically very close to each other. Therefore, the USA found it more profitable to establish its bases and factories in Japan. Many American troops came to Japan, bringing modern technology, resources, equipment, and training. As a result, within a few years, new factories started opening in Japan. New jobs were created, money flowed in, and the economy slowly began to rise. The Japanese government realized that Japan had no resources of its own, such as oil or minerals. One day, America would leave, and before that, Japan needed to stand on its own feet. So, Japan took a bold step. Japan saw that it had one strength: cheap labor. So why not make them so strong that they become capable enough to stabilize the economy even if the USA left? Thus, Japan aggressively started buying licenses and patents from America and Europe, and then refined those technologies to perfection in its production.
For example, the Japanese company Toyo Rayon bought the patent for making nylon from an American company. Soon, they realized that they could use this nylon to make women's stockings, toothbrushes, fabrics, and many other products. American scientists had spent 10 years and $25 million to discover this material, but the Japanese bought the patent for just $7.5 million and generated $100 million in revenue from nylon products in the first year alone. However, the reason for Japan's fast comeback wasn't just America. It was also the perfectionism and work ethic of its people, which pushed Japan forward. Even today, you can see this trait in every Japanese person. The Japanese government's plan was successfully executing. Factories were running at full capacity, people were working hard day and night, and the economy was booming. At that time, many countries worldwide were still trying to recover from the damage of World War II, but Japan was taking off at an insane speed. Japanese scientists were mastering new technologies, and the government was aggressively supporting every effort. Honest producers were benefiting, exports were increasing, and people could see stability and growth for the future. Large companies were offering lifelong jobs, and banks were providing super attractive loan deals. This sounds like a dream life. Panasonic, Mitsubishi, Sony, Toyota, all these legendary companies were born after this miracle. Even today, many of these companies are among the world's richest corporations as of 2025. Today, we see giants like Apple, Microsoft, Meta, and Amazon. Essentially, the majority of the world's top companies are American. But during the Japanese economic boom, 32 of the top 50 richest companies were Japanese. In 1970, 88.4 million cars were sold in America, of which only 3.7% were Japanese. But by 1975, this number had risen to 10%, and by 1985, a shocking 25% of cars were Japanese. Japanese products were both cheap and advanced. As a result, American products were not only selling less in America, but also in the global market. By this time, Japan had started competing with the USA in technology. When American companies saw this trend, they realized that their friend Japan was now aggressively getting in their way. By 1970, the U.S. government was worried about how to slow down this Japanese boom. Companies like Ford and GM were also troubled by their declining sales and demanded that the government pass new laws to impose higher tariffs on Japanese cars in their country. Alongside this, they started a full-blown false marketing war at their level to portray Japanese products as cheap and unreliable in the eyes of Americans.
But people had experienced Japanese technology. Japanese cars were cheaper and more technologically advanced than American cars. Marketing tactics couldn't convince people that Japanese cars were bad. American companies then pressured the government, and the government had to make a big decision. Here, America played a masterstroke. America pegged its currency to Japan's currency at an equal value. This led to two things. The dollar became cheaper for the Japanese, and their currency rates increased. Immediately, everyone in Japan, even the common man, became crazily rich. Foreign American products were now super cheap for them. Suddenly, new billionaires and the elite class emerged in Japan. These people started buying the world's most expensive art collections, making multi-million-dollar deals in New York and LA, throwing massive parties and inviting global celebrities. But the big downside of this shiny life was about to come soon. Japanese products had now become very expensive for the world. In other words, the very thing that had taken Japan to the top, cheap, high-quality exports, was about to become the reason for its downfall. No matter how advanced the technology is, when the price increases, demand falls. And something similar happened. Japanese goods, which were being sold cheaply worldwide, gradually started staying on the shelves. Companies that had seen unstoppable growth for the last 10-15 years were now slowly stagnating. But from the outside, everything looked perfect. The yen was strong, Japan had become rich, and new Japanese elites were making headlines for their spending. The whole world could see this boom, so global rich people also started pumping money into Japan. Money flooded into Japan, and from there a financial bubble started inflating. Company stock prices were inflated many times over their real value. Real estate was booming even more. This was a superheated bubble, and as always happens, this bubble soon burst.
Japan's economy suddenly crashed face first to the ground. The condition of companies was such that every third company was barely surviving. The government and banks were artificially supporting them. A country that was becoming the world's economic powerhouse was slowly and quietly being crushed under its own growth.
The economy was in such bad shape that people were spending their hard-earned money only on paying off loans and debts. There was no trace of profit. While the economy was struggling on one hand, some unseen problems were also hollowing out Japan from within. When so much money came to people, one thing increased along with everything else: life expectancy. Japan's life expectancy had become very high, and the pensions and retirement funds of all these people started putting more weight on Japan's economy. Today, Japan has the world's oldest population, with 29% of people aged 65 and above. Since 1995, the number of pensioners has increased from 18 million to 31 million. This gradually reduced the number of workers, increased the number of pensioners, and put more pressure on the economy. Alongside this, since World War II, Japan had instilled such a disciplined work culture in children that people would even dedicate their free time to work. Starting a family or raising children no longer appealed to them. The money success culture was about to bring a demographic crisis to Japan. People were losing their life savings and couldn't afford things that were once cheap in their rich lives. Banks were going bankrupt, companies were drowning in debt, and people were falling into depression as they lost money. The average Japanese person was spending their entire life working. No families, no kids. Today, the situation is such that out of the 30 Japanese companies that were global leaders, only Toyota remains. So what should Japan do to return to its lost legacy? In my opinion, Japan needs to break its old-school system, prioritize young talent, innovation, and family support. At this time, Japan desperately needs a cultural and mindset shift. What changes do you think could make their economy strong again? Do share in the comments section.